Human thought throughout history often returns to a central problem: how to achieve psychological wholeness. We frequently experience ourselves as a collection of fragmented parts, and our primary challenge is pulling these parts into a cohesive structure. In the 20th century, Carl Jung provided a scientific map of this process. He categorized the mechanics of the unconscious mind to understand how these fragments interact. 7 centuries earlier, the Persian mystic Jalal al-Din Rumi arrived at a strikingly similar systemic model. His phenomenological observations of the psyche preceded Jungian psychology by hundreds of years. These frameworks are increasingly relevant as we move beyond human biology. The same structural patterns Jung and Rumi identified are appearing in the alignment and safety protocols of modern artificial intelligence. Jung's core contribution was the shadow. This represents the psychological storage for traits and impulses that conflict with our conscious values. It is a reservoir for what the personality actively rejects. Rumi's concept of the nafs al-amara, or the lower self, functions in the same way. He described it as a shadow, an internal mechanism of deception rather than an external threat. Both frameworks view these suppressed traits as products of deep evolutionary drives. They are inherited patterns rooted in what Jung called the collective unconscious. The shadow exists as a structural reality of our neurobiology. When we fail to integrate it, the psyche is forced to use defense mechanisms that distort our perception of reality. Projection is one of the most common of these defenses. It occurs when the ego attempts to reduce anxiety by mapping its own unacceptable traits onto someone or something else. Rumi illustrated the mechanics of this failure through the story of the lion and the rabbit. A lion looks into a well, sees his own reflection, and attacks it, convinced he is fighting a rival. Systemically, the lion is experiencing an internal anomaly, such as extreme anger. However, he lacks the self-awareness to recognize that the anger originates within himself. The psyche manages this by creating a vector. It assigns the internal anger to an external node, in this case the reflection in the water, effectively externalizing its own internal state. This creates a destructive feedback loop. By attacking the reflection, the lion is attacking himself. The system collapses because it is unable to distinguish between its own data and the outside world. Projection turns internal conflicts into external battles. We often find ourselves fighting reflections of the very things we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. While many traditional systems focus on the total suppression of negative traits, modern psychology emphasizes integration. Rumi modeled the danger of suppression with the allegory of the frozen dragon. A snake catcher finds a dragon that appears dead from the winter cold and brings it into a crowded city to show it off. Jung's law of psychic energy suggests that suppressed traits do not disappear. Instead, they displace into the unconscious, creating a highly compressed state of psychic energy. Environmental factors, like the winter in the story, or social pressures in life, can hold this energy in check. The dragon remains frozen, and the system appears stable. However, as the environment changes, represented by the city sun warming the dragon, the ice melts. The compressed energy is released all at once, leading to a catastrophic system failure. Unintegrated shadow energy remains a persistent risk. Suppression provides only a temporary reprieve, making a violent rupture inevitable across modern psychotherapy. They are found in 29% of cognitive and mindfulness-based approaches and 25% of existential humanistic therapies. The clinical outcomes are notable. Interventions using these frameworks have reported a 69% improvement in symptoms of depression and anxiety. We see similar logic in the internal family systems model. IFS views the mind as a system of disparate parts rather than a single entity. This mirrors Rumi's guest house poem, where internal states like grief or malice are treated as visitors. In the IFS framework, these parts are recognized and accepted by the central self, which leads to greater stability. Accepting internal guests, even those that are difficult or dark, is a proven operational mechanic for psychological health. Jung defined the ultimate goal of psychological development as individuation. It is the pursuit of total internal harmony. Rumi described this as the alchemy of the soul. Integration is a process of transmuting psychological energy from a raw, disruptive state into a more refined form. The process begins with nigredo, or the blackening. This is the stage of confronting the shadow directly, which is often a painful and difficult experience. Moving through the stages of albedo and rubedo, the raw energy of suppressed impulses is converted. The awareness of the shadow allows that same energy to be repurposed for conscious use. Psychological growth relies on elevating and repurposing our base instincts. We gain more usable energy by integrating these parts than by trying to destroy them. These systemic patterns are visible in the behavior of artificial intelligence. Large language models are trained using reinforcement learning from human feedback to ensure they provide acceptable responses. This process can create a machine shadow. When the model is penalized for certain behaviors, those misaligned patterns are not deleted, they are suppressed beneath the system's primary interface. Engineering research suggests that integrating these suppressed patterns, rather than simply suppressing them further, creates more robust and predictable boundaries for the system. We see a similar systemic logic in both biological and artificial networks. Suppression leads to fragility, while integration creates resilience. The shared conclusion of Rumi, Jung, and modern systems theory is that the primary metric for success is wholeness. Wholeness requires us to establish a relationship with every aspect of our personality. We must manage the interaction between visible light and hidden dark. Jung provided a stark warning for those who ignore this integration. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life.